On today's World Insight, 15 nations across the Asia-Pacific signed the RCEP trade agreement. What will this mean for post-pandemic economic recovery?
This will be a good signal that East Asia is back in business.
And double development dynamics is the buzzword for the 14th five-year plan. Can China withstand external pressures to reach its economic targets?
Because of past years, anti-globalization and also protectionism, to make China has to think about what is the alternative for our company.
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei in Beijing. We begin today's program with the world's biggest free trade agreement measured in terms of GDP. The long-awaited Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, also known as RCEP, was signed by its 15 members on Sunday. The FTA is between the 10 ASEAN member states and 5 partners, namely China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. It covers nearly a third of the global population, about 30% of the global GDP. The agreement will reduce tariffs on trade in goods and improve rules for trade in services. Since its introduction at the 19th ASEAN Summit in November 2011, more than 30 rounds of talks have been held. And certainly, this is many consider RCEP as a vote for multilateralism and free trade. So what's the significance of RCEP overall, and how is it going to compete with other FTAs in the region, some ask? Let's loop in our panelists, all from the region. And for more on RCEP, joining us in Beijing, Zhu Jiangong, professor of PBC School of Finance of Tsinghua University. In Tokyo, Lin Tan-Wai, adjunct research fellow from the National University of Singapore. And in Bangkok, Thitinan Sutirak, professor and director of the Institute of Security and International Studies from Chulalongkorn University, Faculty of Political Science. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. This is good news. However, before we celebrate it at 100%, we need to know that countries involved need to confirm, and there is a process in every country. So how far are we from a real deal, Professor Zhu?
Well, all countries, the 15 member countries need to sign. However, I guess we see different directions in Asia. While we know U.S. and even European, it's some of go back to the globalization, but in China, the opening up it's a speed up. So I'm optimistic for that will be signed soon. The major reason is because the largest economy in this region, China, actually speed up on the opening up, on the trade liberalization. As long as China want to push, I think that opening up will be very quickly established.
Professor Thitinan Sutirak, what is your take on this as a member of the ASEAN? How is Thailand articulating this?
Well, I think it's a big milestone for regional trade liberalization in a uncertain and anxious multilateral trade environment. As we can see, the multilateral trading system has broken down. It's not been an international agreement for some time. So short of that, there's been second-best outcomes like the CP, TPP. I think it's very important for Thailand because Thailand has had some domestic political difficulties, and as a result, Thailand has not been able to sign on to any FTA agreement for some time. So RCEP is the first major FTA agreement for Thailand, but also very important for ASEAN. This is an ASEAN-centered agreement. It was organized and arranged and peddled and by ASEAN countries. This year being signed in Vietnam as the chair of ASEAN. So I think it provides some momentum and some focus for the ASEAN countries that they're still central in this regional liberalization. ASEAN centrality is still important. Beyond that, I think for East Asia, for China and Japan, this is the Northeast Asia agreement as well, together with Southeast Asia, together with Australia and New Zealand. Without India, I think that's something to be noted. India pulled out. This agreement could have been signed even last year. I mean, they were finalizing it. I think the sticking point was India's participation. And I think some countries wanted to wait and allow India to fully join, but India pulled out. So now it's just Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand. The agreement, RCEP, streamlines and consolidates a lot of the FTAs that the member countries, member economies already have with each other. So I think overall, it's something to be, I think, praised and congratulated, and also to realize that it's just still a step in the right direction, short of a multilateral trade liberalization agreement.
Mr. Lim, your take.
Yes, of course, Singapore is very excited about this free trade agreement. It looks forward to working with its ASEAN colleagues, Northeast Asian colleagues, Oceanic colleagues, for making this agreement possible. Singapore and many other countries believe that it will create jobs, but looking beyond that, Singapore is already looking forward to a post-pandemic recovery. And this would definitely help with the post-pandemic recovery because it breaks down barriers for products within the region. Now, the RCEP is even more extensive than bilateral FTA agreements. For example, if you have a product that has a components from Indonesia and from Australia, some of the bilateral FTAs may not cover that. But when you have the RCEP in place, that means within the region, all products with different components will be able to move freely. Also, in the far future, it is possible for both RCEP and CPTPP to admit future members. That's always a possibility. If the conditions are right, China may join CPTPP. If the conditions are right, US may join RCEP, and this will help in the future forward to the final FTAAP, which is a much larger free trade agreement.
Professor Titharan Santhonthirak, one of the things people have been wondering about, of course, is the Indians' participation, but also what's going to be the role of the United States as that country is still going through its domestic political storm as we speak about its election. So is this posing an opportunity for the United States, or is this, in a way, putting a competitive edge of Asia and Oceanian countries together against or in competition against the United States?
Well, this is going to put pressure for the United States because it has been left out. Both it has pulled out of the CPTPP,
That's right.
and of course the U.S. is not part of RCEP. At the same time, I think it will also represent an opportunity for the U.S. to maybe rejoin the CPTPP. There will be a lot of incentive in Washington. I think that they will think that they have missed the boat, and the U.S. is very polarized, as we can see. So now that one side, President Trump seems to have lost the elections, and even though it's contested, it looks like President-elect Biden will be coming in, and his team are full of leftovers, holdovers from the Obama years. So I would not be surprised if they start to contemplate rejoining the CPTPP because they're not in RCEP and they're pulled out of the CPTPP. On the other hand, RCEP now, you can see it's not just Asia Pacific, but it's more East Asia. It doesn't include India now because India is pulled out. So this is a really different kind of vehicle for regional integration. East Asian economies, you can see there's some overlap. I mean, RCEP has 7 members who are in the CPTPP, but RCEP also includes all the Southeast Asian countries, not just 4 in the CPTPP, so all 10. At the same time, I think the smaller economies may not be as prepared when it comes down to implementation. And I think RCEP is less ambitious than the CPTPP. It does not address a lot of the provisions on the services trade, for example.
Right.
So opportunity and risk at the same time, but a lot of pressure for the U.S. now to rejoin the CPTPP.
Professor, if I could just follow up a little bit about that. since U.S. is still uncertain about whether to join or not, and therefore many wonder, Professor, whether the future initiating stage of RCEP will be delayed. Meanwhile, many wonder, even after January inauguration of a president in the United States, the country will be still as divided as it is today. So how much a president of that time will be able to push the trade agenda, even if he wants to? That's an all-interesting question, but timing is very important, Professor.
For the U.S., they, as you mentioned, very divided and polarized. I mean, I think that they will have to heal a lot of the problems at home. At the same time, I think the foreign policy and security team of President-elect Biden, they'll be looking at the regions, and they'll be coming back with some kind of their own strategy, maybe not the free and open Indo-Pacific as such under Trump. I think the key question will be, to what extent will Biden re-adopt some of the Obama policy posture and directions, and to what extent the Biden administration will reject everything that Trump has done. So I think maybe something in between, we may see the U.S. re-engaging in a different way, maybe the rhetoric will calm down a bit, maybe the substance will be more cooperative, and I think that they will be looking at somehow rejoining the regional trade order. At the same time, they'll also be concerned about China, as the other countries will. China is in RCEP, China is not in CPTPP. I think that we all want kind of a balance in the regional trade order. So if the U.S. gets back in, re-engages, maybe that will provide a better international kind of regional atmosphere for liberalization, and maybe also a better regional balance.
Professor Xu from China, what do you make of this interesting question? How is China articulating all these possibilities?
This RCEP, it's a very welcome, positive move. While it is additional step, China has already have the free trade agreement with Asia, with Korea, with Australia, with New Zealand. So I think RCEP it's just a start point. There will be a long way to go in China, in Asia, to have an integrated market. A signing of RCEP, it's a very positive signal. It shows that in Asian countries still are very much willing to for the more open up, particularly in trade. We can move like a service trade, like a digital economy, like the particularly in technology competitions. So there are still many things that we should move up.
Right. Professor Xu, you probably know the momentum in China better than I do. So, but for people who are from outside China, they need to take a look at some of a series of events going on recently in China, probably to feel the temperature. Let me just mention some of them. For example, the third Import Expo, arguably the largest in the world, that just took place in Shanghai. Meanwhile, China celebrated the 30th anniversary of Pudong New Area. That's 10 years after Shenzhen was established. But this is much more about financial sector combined with high tech. And then we have been hearing from the top Chinese officials, certainly about the 14th five-year plan, which emphasize about higher level of opening up, higher quality of opening up. Professor Xu, what seems to be what China wants to do right now?
So as long as China want to move, open up the market, these around the neighbor countries will enjoy larger benefits from this market. As we see, China has determined to opening a domestic market to the neighbor countries. That will provide a public goods.
But Professor Titinan Pansutiraka, would you like to comment about the role of China and how do you think ASEAN is articulating it right now? Global public good, regional public good?
Well, certainly RCEP can and should be viewed as a regional public good. Freer trade is good for all the member economies, especially as it does not erect or raise barriers to outsiders. So it's good for the region. I see another potential benefit here. there have been a lot of geopolitical tensions in our region, and the idea that we have more economic interdependence and trade enmeshment, freer trade enmeshment among the regional economies could have a positive spillover effect for other areas. So this is, to me, RCEP is not a gold standard trade liberalization like the WTO++ or even the CPTPP. Nevertheless, it is significant. As Professor Zhu said, it allows the smaller economies a better chance to integrate within the region. At the same time, China already has been playing a leading role as a locomotive for growth and development in the region. This will stamp and cement China's role in trade liberalization, in trade and economic growth. At the same time, I think we also have to pay attention to the tensions in the region. And these are serious tensions. So RCEP could provide a platform, a bridge for resolving some of these regional tensions, because it creates goodwill, positive gestures in the trade realm, and that I think could spill into the other geopolitical tensions we have. So it's something to build on. It's not automatic.
Earlier, there were certain delays of the discussion due to various issues, the momentum, and the political atmosphere. Now, finally get it done. How is Singapore looking at China at this point in this?
Now, with the RCEP, that means that it is not just between East Asian entities like ASEAN and China, but it includes Oceania as well as Northeast Asia. So this can only mean symbolically very well and positively signals for free trade in the region. Of course, the role of China is very important. It is the largest player within the RCEP. At the same time, this trade pact is also ASEAN-centric. So this provides a very good complementarity between big economic players and also the hub and spokes kind of model, whereby the ASEAN is in the driver's seat. That makes it acceptable for many players to come in. The most important thing is not competition or rivalry. The most important thing is to have a normative free trade regulatory framework in which all players, big and small, are able to play fairly. And also this will lead well into the future with the FTAAP, which is much larger. And there is some complementarity with the CPTPP as well, because RCEP is the low-lying fruit. Therefore, a lot of its implementations can be easy. Agriculture, for example, is not emphasized within RCEP. CPTPP is of high golden standards, with a focus on labor rights as well as environmental issues. With the right conditions, perhaps even China may join CPTPP. So there's no zero-sum game here. If both CPTPP as well as RCEP progress well and are ratified, and should the incoming Biden administration, which is widely considered to be multilateralist, re-engages the East Asia and Asia Pacific, I think this can only mean well for a world which is recovering from the pandemic. And it will create jobs for many countries. It will also smoothen trade relations between many countries. It is first and foremost a trade pact, not a political pact. But there can be some spillover, some goodwill, some confidence-building measure that can spill over to the political realm.
How much it will be able to withstand the vulnerability of politics, especially geopolitics between China and the United States, and also the politics within the United States, because there's unfortunately a tendency that internal political struggles within the U.S. is likely to be exported onto issues of international importance. So that's many people, I'm sure, having in mind when we are celebrating, Mr. Lim.
In the case of the U.S., the expectation is not really focused on RCEP. The expectation is focused on CPTPP. Multilateralists within the U.S. are very pro, especially within the Biden administration. They are considering the possibility of rejoining the CPTPP. Now, this will be up to the US to determine what are its own national interests and what are its economic interests. Now, for the RCEP, most of the talk and concentration on future possible membership is actually on India. There are still a lot of members within the RCEP that are keen to bring India abroad as and when they are ready. So there is a special exceptional rule that applies to India. Within the first 18 months when RCEP comes into play, no new members are allowed to join under the rules, with the exception that is made for India. So there are members within RCEP that hopes India can join in as and when they're ready, or as and when it is, they consider it to be in their national interest. So this can also expand the scope of free trade beyond just East Asia, but it extends to South Asia as well.
RCEP is signed without the US. So that actually indicates the regional corporations actually play a strong role. So that's very good. And while we see the WTO has a hard time, and also the what we call the super globalization has declined. However, these different kind of what I call new globalization, which basically the regional integrations actually could move at least in Asia. So that I think it's very important signals. The contents of RCEP, yes, it is a small steps compared to CPTPP. CPTPP would cover much more higher, more materials.
COVID-19, if you look at the world, Asia and Asia plus Oceanian countries seems to be handling it apparently at this stage better than the rest of the world. Let's just say than Europe, than North America, Latin America. So how much will that create a momentum for RCEP to move forward into real actions? Professor Zhu?
I think at this atmosphere, and many countries in these Asian countries could have more cooperations in the COVID-19. And even in RCEP framework, and these Asian countries should talk how to work together to contain this COVID-19 and also to rebuild the economic activities. At least, for examples, looks like the code, right? This test code and this flight, normalized flight, and between these member countries, and I think there are a lot of space we should talk together.
Mr. Lin, now countries are closing the border, understandably, because of COVID-19. I understand where you're coming from. Singapore also doing it to a certain extent. When we talk about free trade, the free movement of both cargoes, ideas, money, and of course people. But at this moment, it is still difficult. So how much will RCEP be able to provide a platform for all members, or not rather, parties, to talk about it and to figure out a relatively good and flexible ideas and mechanism to have it done? I think that would be a very urgent task for RCEP, even though it is mainly about trade.
Okay, there are, first of all, the global pandemic is a global event. So humanity must unite against the global pandemic. There are two stages to the global pandemic. First, you have to cope with the disease. And in this area, ASEAN +3, including China, between Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia, they have cooperated in trying to fight against and mitigate the effects of the pandemic itself. Then there is a second stage, which is the economic impact of the pandemic. And it is in this economic impact of the pandemic that RCEP comes into very great importance, because countries must look forward to a post-pandemic recovery. Right now, we have some vaccines available. Some of them are 90% effective. China also has come up with its own vaccines. So it is time to look beyond the pandemic to look after how we can cope with the post-pandemic economic recovery. RCEP in both symbolic terms. Symbolically, it means that free trade is back again, that you are creating an atmosphere as well as a framework in which you can have free trade to bring back what was before the situation, before the pandemic, and to recover as quickly from the pandemic economic effects as possible. Secondly, the free flow of trade also means that countries become more interdependent with each other. When countries become more interdependent with each other economically, it will result in greater understanding and confidence building measure. That's where your people-to-people contact, which is the track 2 of the exchanges, can then come in. So trade will be the most important thing, but it will be a stimulus for other exchanges and contacts to happen. And because RCEP is now the world's largest free trade agreement, with 30% of the world's population, 30% of the world's trade, and the largest in terms of GDP, this sends a very strong signal within an era where anti-globalization forces are emerging, and where anti-globalization forces are being reinforced by conflicts that are brought about by the pandemic.
Right.
This will be a good signal that East Asia is back in business, that Asia Pacific can be back in business, and that countries can recover faster. It is also symbolically a sign that East Asia is united to fight the economic impact stage of the pandemic. Not just the pandemic itself, but the post-recovery stage.
Certainly, what you have just said, Professor, we need to look much beyond just the next 2 to 3 years to look at the bigger picture. For now, I want to thank both of you for joining us, and of course earlier with Professor from Thailand, Zhu Jiandong from China, and Lin Tianwai from Singapore. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Coming up in the program, double development dynamics is the buzzword for the 14th five-year plan. Can China withstand external pressures to reach its economic target? Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Next, let's take a look at China's economic development and China's agenda for reform and opening up. The country has laid out its major social and economic development targets for the 14th five-year plan. China will speed up a new development pattern where domestic and foreign markets can boost each other, also known as double development dynamics. But what does it mean for China's economy with the uncertainties of geopolitics and the spread of COVID-19 still in different parts of the world? What are the challenges and opportunities facing the country if the target is that? Recently, on the sideline of this year's China Development Forum, I talked to Professor Hai Wen, the Dean of Peking University HSBC Business School. Our conversation begins with the current stage of reform and opening up policy. Tell me more about your take on the celebrations for Shenzhen and also for Tudong these days. It seems that China's reform and opening up has reached a certain stage. How do you reflect back?
First of all, I think the celebration is kind of approved what is important for the China's economic growth, because the growth actually is brought by the openness and also reform. So that is a very important meaning of celebration. At the same time, I think we, both Shenzhen and Pudong, now face the second stage, which means in the first stage, it's more like a look at China, how can stimulate or you kind of give the people more incentive to develop. But now in the different stage, because China internally we come to a stage which the people want to have a good quality of life. So therefore, in the new stage, how we can slowly open up and also the reform to improve quality of the life. So that is the internally. Externally, now China is already become a very strong economy, ranking #2 in the world. So then how we can slowly reform and open up to improve the relationship between China and also other countries. So which means at the early stage, maybe we more like to attract foreign investment. But now we probably need more open up our Chinese market to other countries. So therefore, I think the content of reform and openness has changed based on the new situation.
Professor Hai Wen, though from outside, sometimes there were misunderstandings about China. For example, is China really still going to commit to real reform and real opening up? Is it just a slogan? I remember when interviewing Mr. Zhao Qizheng, the former governor of Pudong New area in Shanghai, he said at the very beginning the foreign investors were asking him, are you just saying a slogan or are you really going to do it? So I guess at the new stage, people are having similar questions, though out of different contexts. What do you think, Professor Hai Wen?
Well, that's depend on what is our goal. For example, now, first of all, you can see one of the goals is we improve the quality of life. So therefore, we need to develop some certain shortage. For example, education, health, and culture, and also the brand, commodity, all those services. So in order to improve the quality of life, then we need to open up. We need to import the service and the quality, the good quality commodity. So for that point, then the other goal is China want to play a good role in the world, which means China want to create such a society which all the country can be cooperate and grows together.
But some would say, oh, China has been opening up, but too slow, for example, in certain areas. Others say, well, is China really going to walk the talk?
Slow is not a problem. Stop is a problem. I think should understand the stability is much more important than hurry but make some kind of trouble. So as long as we are moving as such a big country, so I don't think from a historical point of view, China is already opened up reform pretty fast in the history. So depend how to look at the slow or fast.
Double circulation is the current policy being described in the 14th five-year plan. So Professor Hai Wen, what do you make of this terminology?
I think two reasons why we talk about the double circulation. In particular, we're talking about how to develop the Chinese market by ourselves. One reason, it is a natural result for China economic growth, because usually at the early stage, because the domestic, the income is not so high, so therefore the most important is earn foreign currency. So we work hard, export, and then we receive money, we increase our revenue, our income for people. But come to a certain stage, like the United States, internal market will be very important for business. So even you don't mention, but China is already come to a stage, domestic market, domestic purchasing power is already become main driving forces for economic growth. But on the other hand, also China now face another economic situation I think we have to deal with because of past years anti-globalization and also protectionism. To make China has to think about what is alternative for our company. So when the external situation getting worse, of course, we don't have other choice. We have to look at internal. And also internal, we do have opportunity. So it's not like before we probably only focus international market or only focus on domestic market. But now we should have a big view, put the two markets at the same level, even same system in the future.
What do you make of the uncertainties from now until, let's just say, coming January, before a new administration or the same administration but in a new term sworn in inside Washington? How is China going to observe this process and also be able to work on its original goals? That's what a lot of people are very curious about China.
You cannot solve all the problems because this is inevitable to as a country rising, especially such a big country. So I think the most important is China should continue do whatever we believe. In particular, if we believe open up and reform is the key, or it is most important for us. So it's not to do something for other countries, but it's a benefit for China. But at the same time, we have to considering how benefit to the world.
Is China moving, some suspect, toward the U.S. model, quote unquote, in a way? Is China moving toward that direction? Is that the goal, or there's something very different here?
It is not moving as a goal, but it is a result, a natural stage. Once the income goes up, then of course domestic people already have a very strong purchasing power. So therefore, for not only the external people or the other country will look at the Chinese market, of course for Chinese company also think this is a much strong market for to sell. So I think it's a very natural result as the economy grow up.
We've seen the recent performance of the Singles Day. It's amazing, much bigger than that of last year. Under the current circumstances with COVID-19 and unpredictability of the global economy, some say, what's going on with Chinese consumers? They're just amazed about the enthusiasm in China to consume. Professor Haiwen, how do you see this phenomenon?
Well, it's very happy to see that, and also I think that's why for the Chinese company, now they have to pay more attention to the domestic market because it is much more opportunity here. But at the same time, we should let outside know that not just the import from China, but also sometimes you should think about how to export to China. So that is the new situation and also a new stage.
Yeah, we noticed that even though there has been a deadlock within WTO system, regional trade mechanism has been taking on a rise. RCEP, for example, is one of it, regionally in the Asia-Pacific region, for example. So how do you see regional mechanism like this and platforms will be able to solve some of the problems that we have with global trade under this very difficult circumstances when most of the countries are closed down because of COVID-19, even though the flow of trade is still going on, but people are worried about this potential. So how will these regional mechanisms be able to serve their purpose?
We are more interested in the multilateral system. I think that is still should be a goal for China instead of focus on the regional. Because regional has some benefit, but at the same time it's a little bit exclusive to other regions. So I think to solve the problem of the COVID-19, this temporary situation, I still believe this will go away anytime, maybe next year. So this will be not the last forever. So we still should believe, in particular, in this situation, the protectionism and isolation, we still have to believe the multilateral system, that WTO, will be much better than the regional agreement.
We're seeing something that we have never seen before, all of us. A global pandemic of this scale has never happened in our lifetime, mostly. So the global economy, at the same time, the divide of wealth and all existing at the same time. So, Professor Haiwen, if you could give a word or two about what to hold on to so that we could face the challenge today and be able to move on, What would be that word? What would be that direction?
Calm, persistent. So, which means we face challenge, but we must be very calm and not be disturbed. But at the same time, we should persistent on something, value, and also the path of growth and beliefs.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.